Welcome to Social Music Talk, the show that explores the past, present, and future of music. We want to look at San Francisco radio right now. KFOG, one of the most legendary stations in that market. It has been around since the 60s. It was a elevator station at first, playing instrumental, easy listening music. Until 1982, it went rock. And over time, it became more of an adult rock or AAA station, album adult alternative. And it kept that 60s, 70s vibe going all along. And then it was bought out in 1989 by Susquehanna. It had been owned by GE, a giant corporate monster that had owned NBC. In fact, they even created NBC and RCA. But GE was one of the biggest companies in America at the time, and it sold it off to Susquehanna, a smaller company that did a lot with KFOG, turned it into something even more legendary than what it was. They developed a list of fog heads, like a marketing list, and they had 80,000. And I was never a fog head, but I was always a big fan of the station. One of my favorite stations of all time in the Bay Area. And I didn't sign up to be a foghead, but I guess I could be considered a foghead based on how much I listened. It's just a surreal type of programming, lots of 60s, 70s staple songs mixed in with 80s modern rock, mixed in with the 90s alternative thing, but never too loud or screechy, always cool as far as mixing in new music with it. Then one day, the station sold to Cumulus in the 21st century, and they pretty much derailed the station. I don't know if they know anything about rock and roll, but it sure didn't come off that way. What they did was they watered down the station, started adding in a bunch of pop garbage. That didn't work. Eventually, about a year ago, this is August 2019, and we're leading up to September 6th, 2019, when the station flips to sports. Okay, but about a year ago, the station flipped from AAA to alternative. Now, what's interesting about that is alternative is a very failed format this century. It just isn't what it was last century. In the 90s, and I played a big role in it because I was program director at Quad in Sacramento, and that was one of the highest rated alternative stations in America at that time, despite being an independently owned station and beating our corporate competitors in the market, which were the rock-leaning stations. I can tell you with confidence that the alternative format is dead this century from being too over-corporatized. Last century we had a lot of momentum from being an indie station, but then again, not all alternative stations were indie. A lot of them were corporate, but corporate must have known back then that you got to leave these stations alone, in the sense that let the programmer know what's best for that market. Don't just try to nationalize it and turn it into generic top 40, which is what the audience doesn't want. So anyway, AAA became a pretty good format for a while, and then a lot of stations deserted the format, and I don't know why, because it really is a good format that a lot of adults appreciate. It's even doing well in certain markets, huge markets like Denver and Portland. You got Kink in Portland, and KBCO in Denver. Those are landmark stations in America doing well with AAA, yet San Francisco, way more left-wing than Denver or Portland will ever be, can't figure out, or at least a corporation in San Francisco can't figure out how to make legendary call letters, KFOG, work for San Francisco. The call letters already has had tons of listeners over the years. All they had to do is go back and find those listeners again. Instead of sticking with AAA, they went with alternative, which is a louder, noisier, more overproduced, unmelodic format of just throwaway corporate records. Okay, I'm not being like unhip saying this. I'm being factual, explaining why alternative is a deteriorated format. Okay, alternative used to put tons of artists on the national charts. Now it barely does that. Okay, it barely shows up on the Billboard 200 album chart. I think there were 4 listings the last time I checked the past month for alternative acts. Yet there were several classic rock acts. I mean, Beatles, CCR, Hendrix, they all appear on the chart still. They're still selling albums. You know, it's hilarious because this includes streams as well, the Billboard 200. So alternative's a dead format. You check the ratings everywhere, the Nielsen ratings, and it just isn't happening except in a handful of markets. And what's even worse and bizarre is Cumulus decided to stick KFOG up against KITS, which has been doing the alternative format in San Francisco since the 80s, okay, mid-80s, and more known as Live 105 back in the day, now called Alt 105.3 or whatever. I don't know why Intercom changed that. It was another bad move. Just like Cumulus, a bad move, just throwing away legendary call letters, and now it's going to be just a freaking repeater of an AM sports station, KNBR. That just is ridiculous. The fact that the bigger blooper was a year ago when they went alternative, but a known fallen format. They could have consulted me and asked me, hey Alex, what do you think about this idea of going alternative in San Francisco, a fallen format, and going up against the leader of that format that also has, sinking numbers. Well, Live 105, I'm sorry, KITS got a 2 share and KFOG ended up with a 1 share. That's not considered too happening in market number 4, San Francisco. But anyway, is this more evidence that the top people in radio have a lot to learn about radio programming? If they really wanted to be successful, they wouldn't be doing these crazy things like throwing away legendary call letters or not having a AAA in market number 4, which is very suitable for AAA. It's unbelievable. And to have 2 alternatives in that market when it has a history of not having good ratings, that makes no sense. There's already plenty of sports in the Bay Area, but again, it's not supposed to make sense. It's supposed to make dollars, actually, advertising dollars. But these radio companies are underwater. Cumulus is emerging from bankruptcy, but their stock has been falling all year. So they still have financial problems. Anyway, that's what's going on in San Francisco radio in August 2019. Social music.